Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress. Steve and I are together again in studio. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Planes, trains, automobiles.
But you are back.
Yes, sir.
And we have a new whiskey to talk about.
Yeah, we do. Eagle Rare. I'm a fan of Eagle Rare in terms of bang for your buck. I think it's probably another solid bourbon. And so let's just jump into it.
Jump into our scoring. I'm fine with that. I think it's real smooth. Mm-hmm. Has a really good flavor. Nothing crazy, not a ton of smoke, not a ton of anything. Just real nice. I mean, I would call it a classical bourbon flavor. Doing our scale, we've stuck to our word, and we're now rating our scorings down ahead of time, so there's no bias by the other guy. I'm giving it an 89.
Outstanding. Okay, so so I have written down here my same score, and what do you see?
86?
No, it's an 89, Dick. Where are your readers, Jim?
Right there.
Oh no, that's the wrong one.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Top corner.
Yes, 89. There we go. Okay.
Sorry. Fair.
I read the number you put in front of me.
That was from last week. Sorry.
Okay. Wow. We're actually in agreement.
Right.
Exactly for the first time.
Right. So, Eagle Rare to me is a very, very good bourbon. My issue with Eagle Rare is it's oaky, and there is an oak to it, but it's not a smoky oaky, if that makes sense, right?
There's no smoky oaky going on.
There's no smoky oaky going on. It's you taste the wood, which is a good flavor, and it's kind of dry. It almost presents like a rye whiskey to a degree, but it's not quite that dry. And then you pick up I pick up a little bit of a dark, maybe a dark cherry or a berry flavor in there, probably from some wine casks that are used. I think they use sherry casks with Eagle Rare.
I'll go along with that.
So so there's a little bit of complexity to it, not a ton, and the flavor really comes on the back end. Up front it's up front, it's kind of oaky. You get it, and then once it sits on the tongue for a little bit and it goes down, you're like, oh, okay, so there's everybody else to come and play. So I agree with you. I give it an 89. And honestly, I think it's like $35 a bottle. And so, it's a good buy. It comes in, I believe it's a higher proof. I think it's like 90 proof. Yeah, 40%, 45%. So
90 proof,
it comes in at 90 proof. It's a little bit stronger. But for the cost and the quality flavor that you get, it's a great buy. If you can find it, at your local liquor store, you're looking for a good bourbon, but you don't want to spend $50, $60, then I think Eagle Rare is the way to go.
I would not argue with any of that. Something I will argue with. So, a friend of mine, a lovely lady named Beth, who is a Buffalo Bills fan. We became friends as Bills fans. She is also a huge fan of really spicy foods. Mm-hmm. And somehow she got wind, I don't know how, because me opening my mouth is how, got wind of
this.
got wind of the one chip challenge, the Carolina Reaper chip challenge that's going on. I sent you a clip of Mike and Mike having it on their show. It looks brutal. Well, Beth, my friend, has challenged me to the one chip challenge on the show. So first of all, I'm calling it. I don't really want to do this. It's going to be awful, and I will get humiliated by my friend Beth. You agreed to participate. As a broadcaster who will watch me suffer miserably.
I will be the MC of this event.
If the fans want it. So fans, if you want this to happen, you have to tweet at us or write to us or whatever, because I'm not volunteering if there's no.
Listen,
no, your vote doesn't count. Your vote doesn't count. Beth's vote doesn't count.
I'll go up there and I'll create 100 Twitter accounts if I have to.
It will take 100 emails, tweets, or whatever, and I will go through this. They're hard to find, like $50 a chip, because they're all sold out because so many people are putting themselves through this. So
it's crazy.
Reach out to us. We're Jim at whiskeycongress.com, Steve at whiskeycongress.com. We're at Whiskey Congress on social media.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put a poll out.
Okay. Thanks so much.
The show will be hitting the podcast sphere, Sunday evening. So Sunday evening, I will put a Twitter poll out. Jim doing the Carolina Reaper Chip Challenge, yay or nay. And then we will.
Oh, that'll be a fair vote.
Well, what else do you want me to put?
Fine.
What else would the poll be? You said if we get that's the easiest way to do it.
I don't want easy. I want challenges here. I don't want this to. All right,
it's not about you.
Fine.
Buddy.
It's about not about you. It's about my esophagus.
This is more about Beth, and this is more about our show
and your entertainment. And you can sit back
I'm going to MC it. Listen, I have put myself through plenty of challenges. My anus has suffered enough. My esophagus has suffered enough.
All right, enough about your anus.
That's just the reality of these spicy food challenges. Like that's why I don't do it. It's not the impact on my mouth or tongue. Like I can take heat, but it's the how do you get rid of the heat once you consume it.
I don't know why you think I'm immune to that, but you don't care. I was challenged.
No, I know you're not. Okay. I don't care. Okay. That's the key. I don't care. If this were in text, it'd be underlined and in bold and highlighted.
So anyway, reach out to us. Steve will put a Twitter poll out there.
By the time you hear this, there will be a Twitter poll. So go to Twitter at Whiskey Congress. I will pin it, and you can vote. Does Jim do the Carolina Reaper Chip Challenge? Yay or nay? If you don't want to hear it and see it, because we'll put it on YouTube.
It'll be YouTube as well. Yeah.
We'll definitely record it. So I got fancy new iPhone 8 Plus, so we can get it in high def.
All right, let's talk about something pleasant.
We can see your tears of pain, in which I'll put in a shot glass and drink.
I will drink.
But they might be too spicy, so I may
not. All right. Yeah. So anyway, that will be coming. Moving on. We
get to have Beth in.
And we get to have Beth in. You've met Beth.
I have met Beth.
You met Beth the day after her wedding, actually, watching football. She's a really good friend, and like me, has suffered through this Bills season. So it's not that. It's actually not.
The Browns fans are suffering through the season.
They're suffering through a decade.
Right. I mean, they're right now. Their head coach is 1-26 or 27.
That's right.
By the time the show airs, it'll probably be 1-27.
Yeah.
So you're not suffering.
Fair enough.
You're grinding.
We're grinding, and we get New England this week. All right. I actually do want to talk football later because there've been some things that we've talked about that need to get discussed further.
Hey.
But let's start with.
That's me agreeing.
Okay, thank you. I didn't recognize it. This never happened before. So Trump tweeted out some videos of Muslims doing things that were violent towards Christians and smashing a statue of the Virgin Mary, and he was criticized by the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And all right, there's a bunch of things to break down here.
So there's three videos. Okay, Trump tweets out today, right, or yesterday. He tweets out three videos. One of the videos is it's labeled as a Muslim immigrant beating up, like a migrant Muslim beating up a kid on crutches. And
we just be here. He retweeted, right?
He retweets a video. Now these three videos were put out by a far right extremist group out of the UK that's known for putting out propaganda that's not necessarily accurate. They're very anti-Muslim, and so Trump retweets it, which it's like, all right, that's. That's like Trump retweeting something from InfoWars, which I'm surprised he hasn't done more of, but because I can't say that he hasn't done it. But
right,
that's him literally tweeting something from Alex Jones or InfoWars. But this group is known for putting out misinformation, right? Like, so the video of the alleged Muslim person beating up the kid on crutches. And it's been debunked that the guy who beat the kid up on crutches was, I believe, a Danish citizen, right? And he wasn't Muslim, right? He was just an asshole who beat up a kid on crutches. So, you know, but Trump puts it out there as Muslim beats up kid on crutches. And so it obviously has an anti-Muslim sentiment to it where it's the goal of the video, the intent is to, you know, incite, you know,
fear,
anger, displeasure, whatever, towards Muslims. And, you know, again, he goes to the, we need a wall, we need to, you know, increase all these, you know, checks on people coming in from these types of countries and everything else. And so, I mean, so in that video, I'm thinking, well, that guy wasn't a Muslim, he's Danish. I think we need to look at the Danish and how we're letting them in.
But you could be Danish and Muslim. How, like,
well, the kid's not. He's not Muslim.
Okay,
he's just Danish.
Okay,
he's just a Danish asshole.
Just a Danish asshole.
I mean, he is. He beat up a kid on crutches.
And you're an asshole, and if you're
right.
Danish,
I mean,
you're a Danish
he just
asshole.
happens to be an asshole who's Danish. I don't know what.
Having worked for a Danish company, I just found that those words funny coming together.
Right.
And the people I worked with were great people, so I don't mean to equate assholeness and Danes. So here's what was funny to me. Not funny to me, but here's what's interesting to me. Sarah Huckabee Sanders came on and said, it doesn't matter if the videos are truthful. What matters is the message they're sending. Okay.
So I hopped on Twitter as soon as I saw that and said, okay, so the videos in and of themselves were not real. So if they're not real or they're not accurate or true, then they must be fake. No, and I didn't say that. I should probably actually read the tweet that I sent out because I only had 240 characters, and I think it was 240 characters before I even got to the thing. Did we just get a text from Mike Wood?
We did.
Live.
About so he's listening to our last episode, and he said that he thinks the Baltimore cop we talked about may have fallen on his gun.
What?
We will have to talk to Mike about this.
No, what?
That's what the text says.
Okay.
I love
like the pressure from testifying. Like he.
I don't know. You got the same text I did, I think.
Huh.
Yeah, you're on there too.
Yeah, no, I just.
This isn't one of those texts where you guys tell me what a jackass I am behind my back. This is all of us involved. Yeah, I know about that shit.
First of all, I've never called you anything to Mike that I haven't said to your face.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm probably nicer to you.
No.
I'm probably nicer to you behind your back than I am in person.
You know what? I have no doubts about that. Here's the thing about you. I know in bad times, I would love to have you. I know you'd have my back, and you're a very loyal, very trustworthy friend in bad times. When times are good and you got some time to fuck with me, well, then it's a little more dicey. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. You're not. So my tweet to Sarah Huckabee Sanders was, well, if the video wasn't real, it was blank. And if the fake video was promoted by the president, then isn't that, no, it couldn't be. Fake news?
Dun, dun, dun.
But Jim, I mean, that's listen, I mean, at this point, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I think, has essentially more balls than her predecessor, Sean Spicer, because she literally will just say, fuck it. I like whatever the president says is true, and anything you say that to disparage him, I'm going to defend him to the death. And I think Sean Spicer was like, guys,
he took it personally. Sean Spicer, I was about to say something really disrespectful. Sean Spicer had to, I want to say, look himself in the mirror and it was going to go down a bad path. But I think Sean Spicer had a sense of integrity. I think he'd been around those people. He knew them. And so he couldn't say shit to them and then go out to a bar, have a drink, and risk being talked to by someone like, we know you better than this. The fuck?
I think that's what was happening. You know, but yeah. I mean, what the bizarre thing is with Sean Spicer is that, you know, he's doing the talk show circuit and he's giving speeches and, you know, kind of doing some off the cuff sort of, not off the cuff, but off the record sort of conversations. And people are asking him about what his time was like, and he's still giving sort of bullshit answers. So it's kind of like, I agree with you to a certain degree. I agree with you, but at the same time, it's like,
I think Spicer had a conscience about what he was doing.
I do too, but it seems like that conscience has only it only goes so far.
You can only do that job with so much conscience, though, right? I mean, that job is brutal. To be fair,
no matter
who the president is, it's a brutal job.
It's been. I mean, Obama had multiple. GW had multiple. Clinton had multiple. Like, it's not.
However, we're at new levels of what the fuck with this guy.
Yeah, well, with this girl,
with I've been doing the job for Trump and this girl, and part of me admires her dedication to part of me. I don't respect it in terms of what she's doing. I do respect her stick-to-itiveness, if that.
Yeah, but I mean, now so there was a time I think I agreed with you, but over the last month, it's gotten to a point where I just worry. Like I'm starting to have serious concerns about. They're so willing to just ignore the truth and then ignore precedent and ignore norms of society that I'm starting to get nervous on. We get a year, we get another, another 12 months down the road, and I'm concerned about what they think that they can just do unchecked, right? Like I feel like
that's fair.
And I feel like, I mean, it's getting to a point now where I feel like an executive order is coming and, everybody will be up in arms about it and they'll sue, but, it'll be something where the military will have to enforce it. And I don't want to say I don't want to say what's actually in my head, how bad it could be, but I mean, I don't think we're at a point where he's reinstituting slavery, but I mean, I think, I could see him just deciding, well, I can do this, why can't I? And doing something really, really outrageous that is going to take, it's either going to galvanize everyone, even some of his supporters, to say, okay, he's out of control, we have to stop him, or it's just going to divide us to the point where we're really going to be going down a bad road.
That's a good point in the sense that we talked about, Obamas and Bushes and Clintons. They used to tap dance and dodge and whatever. She just flat out says, what you're hearing in your brain, no, shut that off. Here's an alternative reality.
Right.
And that is a big difference. Right. It's a big difference between, okay, well, if you think about look, a squirrel, no, 2 and 2 is 8. Right. No, the president said 2 and 2 is 8. It's 8.
It's 8.
I'm standing by 8.
3 times 3 is 12.
Yep.
No, it's not. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. The president said it. We know he said it. We know what. Yeah. No, that is a scary turn.
I mean, even the whole thing with just him condemning him condemning Matt Lauer, and then so they go to Sarah Huckabee Sanders like, so isn't there some concern about the president and his allegations of sexual harassment? No. President said he didn't do that, and so I think we all know that he didn't do it because he said he didn't do it. And Matt Lauer is a disgusting human being, and he should burn in hell. You know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah.
It's just like, well, how are you? Wait,
when the president is held to a lower standard than
Matt Lauer, which
Matt Lauer, who
was
so glib once.
Hold on, before we get to him, I mean, I think so. Back to these videos. The other. So we had the video of the Danish asshole beating up the kid in crutches. There was another video of a Muslim bashing a statue of the Virgin Mary. Yeah. And then there was another one of a guy thrown off of a roof by a alleged Muslim mob and then beaten to death. So the video with the person bashing the statue of the Virgin Mary is very disrespectful from a religious standpoint. We don't know where that was. We don't know what you have no context for it. Yeah, it's disrespectful. And part of me says, I like, you look at a video like that, and do I look at that video and say, you're disrespecting my religion, so because of that, I hate you, I hate your religion, I hate people who look like you I don't go there, but I know people that are much, much simpler that can go down that route very easily and say, look at him, that's all of them, that's what they do, that's what they think of us, that's what they think of our religion. They're trying to bring trying to bring Sharia law to us, to America. It's already here, and this is the result.
I know people who will take it that way, and I, as a Catholic we've talked about my ups and downs with being Catholic lately.
You a bad Catholic.
I am a bad Catholic. But
you going to hell.
Well, whatever. Not for that.
Jesus hates you.
All right, stop it. No, but seriously, even when I was in my most, whatever, staunch Catholic modes in my life, I wouldn't have liked it. I would have said you're being a douchebag, but it wouldn't have, that's where it would have ended. Like, okay, good for you. You can beat up a statue. You're so big and brave. I've said this on the show. I've said it in on social media. When people try to stand up for God, like we're in a playground and you're standing up to a high school bully, or worse yet, standing up to the weakling in the crowd who's not in the same camp as you, that mentality is the cause of a whole lot of problems in the world. Agreed. So, I mean, practice your religion, believe what you believe, but God doesn't need you to,
if God exists, he doesn't
need you to be in the schoolyard at 3:00 ready to throw down. So chill the fuck out.
So I guess my question is, the video with the alleged Muslim cleric destroying the statue.
Yes.
Muslim destroys statue of Virgin Mary. It's a video. It's shown.
He had a beard, which must mean he's a Muslim.
But I guess my question is, even if he says in the video that he's a Muslim.
Okay. I have not seen the video. I really don't know.
Right. He doesn't. I don't even think he says anything English. I mean, I think there may be some translation, but who knows if it's right. I guess that's a promotion for Rosetta Stone. Let's go learn Arabic so they can't slip anything by us. But just on the surface, what's wrong with that video? Like just
other than the lack of context in the
right. Well, that's what I'm saying. With no context, I mean, so I guess on the one hand, like, so Trump tweets it. We know where the video came from. It comes from this extremist group. They put it out there, and that's really what people have a problem with. But let's say it didn't come from that group, and let's just say it's a YouTube video. It's a random YouTube video with no reference or anything like that. Trump then tweets that, right? But doesn't necessarily say it's a Muslim destroying a picture of a statue of the Virgin Mary. He just says, look at this person destroying an image of or a statue of the Virgin Mary. Is it still anti-Muslim? And because I think you got to be, there's a little bit of a line here, right? Where, as a black person, we go through this, kind of like we've gone through this with movies, right? Like, black people want to be more represented in movies, but if you want to be more represented in movies, how upset can you be if like, so Denzel Washington won an Oscar for Training Day and people were pissed because, well, he was a bad guy, right? Like, I mean, it's just like, so black people now, we can't be bad guys, like we can't be shown, and like,
he was a fucking awesome bad guy in that movie.
He was great in the movie. So I mean, can we not show? So we just can't show images. Any image image of a Muslim person doing something we don't like, is that anti-Muslim when we see that? Like, just by showing it, is it anti-Muslim by nature?
No, but in the case of this video, though, I do think it was intended to be
and it was the intent, divisive. It was the way it was. When you put everything together, right? When you look at where he pulled the video from, if you look at how the video is labeled, it's obvious that the intent was to. It was anti-Muslim, anti-Islam.
Bring fear to those who don't want Muslim immigrants coming into your country.
Sending out
what that was, right? That was
a
British,
very specific message.
Agreed.
But I think at the same time we have to be careful. Where, listen, not all Muslims are perfect. Not all black people are perfect. Not all white people are perfect. Not all Mexicans or Hispanic, Latino,
Catholics,
whatever.
Yes.
They're not all perfect, and so anytime. We should be able to see negative images of people without us devolving into saying that entire group of people is represented by this particular image, and all those people are now we can consider them all bad because of this one image.
That is such a huge problem in discussion, argument, and social constructs, right? Because so often, oh, that's how they all are. Oh, I mean, when they had the women's march after Trump got elected, one of the women involved in that wore, is it a hijab? Okay. I saw things going around saying that, she was a proponent of Sharia law. I'm like, not a lot of women walking around America are real big Sharia law proponents, because if you know what that means, but
doesn't really work out.
No, it doesn't. But I argued with people on Facebook about this before I finally gave up on doing that. And it was like, wow, that image got put there, an article by welovetrump.com put all this bullshit out there, and because it's not the fake liberal media, it must be true. And suddenly this woman was a subversive trying to bring Sharia law to America, when no, she just happened to be a Muslim woman who was wearing her traditional garb at the time. And yet that got painted totally inaccurately. I think we're talking about the same thing here, and that's why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, and it goes back to, I think, the gullibility of people on both sides of the aisle, left or right. I mean, we could literally put a video, an image. If we take one of your guns from the safe, we throw some, those corny Oakley shades on you, and we put you just standing outside holding your gun.
Put me standing in front of my new Life magazine with Oswald on it, and say, is Jim Lalka the next whatever?
No, I mean, we could just say this guy is the leader of the movement, like fighting for your rights, and put some sort of conservative slogan, and it would spread like wildfire. People would say it's true. And I mean, that's maybe we need to do that.
Maybe I'm making a ton of money off the
maybe Whiskey Congress pivot.
I am.
But I mean, it's amazing how gullible people are. It's ridiculous how they will just take anything.
If they hear what they want to believe, it's real.
Right. I mean, we could put an image on Facebook. We could put an image on Facebook saying that I am the Muslim leader of the Muslim, the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And
or the Bruslim, as we
right.
call
And
it.
I mean, and that would spread in conservative circles. And like, this is the guy that that needs to be taken out. Now the scary thing is, we won't do that, because my fear is
might actually get shot.
because Trump might put it up, and then like next thing you know, drone strike.
So that was, I think, irresponsible and not surprising.
I guess so. We haven't talked a lot about immigration.
We have not.
I mean, I guess we talked about the ban, and we kind of talked when it was a bigger thing, and that ban kind of was put to bed in the last month or so. But let me ask you this, just flat out: where do you come out on immigration? Like, what are some of your general thoughts? Because I have a few, and I have mixed feelings about it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So there's a bunch of things I'd say about this. First of all, most immigrants coming to America are not coming here for any other reason than they are fleeing a terrible situation in their home countries. Whether that's the Middle East, whether it's, it's funny that when you say immigration, the first nationality that people jump to is Mexicans. And I don't know what the net Mexican immigration level is these days, but I'll bet it's really low. Most of the people from Central America coming into the United States are coming through Mexico and into the United States from El Salvador, Nicaragua, places that are just literal war zones, mostly because of the drug war. And then if you talk about, immigration from the Middle East or other, I'm going to call them Muslim countries or other countries that are torn by the wars in the Middle East. Again, mostly the people that are doing that are fleeing for their lives. And let me put it this way. I know if I was in their shoes, I'd be looking to get the hell out too. I do think it's something we have to be careful about. I don't think we can just say open the borders and anyone's welcome with no background checks or whatever, because we have seen some bad folks sneak in with the intention of doing harm, and their only intention was doing harm. But that's really one in a 10,000, one in 100,000 type of person. If I had you want my pie in the sky answer to it? My pie in the sky answer is, let's work as an international community to make places like Syria and El Salvador and Burma, and Burma's on my mind because there's a huge Burmese population moving into Buffalo, and I read about it all the time. And like, I've read some of these stories, and they're just absolutely heartbreaking. It's people who are fleeing for their lives. They end up in east side of Buffalo trying to rebuild their lives, and they're starting over, but they're at least not at risk of being ethnically cleansed. So anyway, I'm very empathetic. I understand it. I think we as the United States, as the, quote unquote leaders of the free world, need to examine the whole problem. And if it means, I'm going to sound like a total lefty here, but if it means giving up some of our wealth and some of our power to make things safer and better around the world, and giving up, what might be the best short-term economic interest for the United States, but the overall humanitarian best interest, I think we ought to be focusing on that. Too long-winded?
No. So I think we probably align pretty closely. I think one of the biggest keys is we have to figure out ways to make these people not want to leave where they're from.
And being safe is number one.
Right. I mean, and so that's a big part of it. And that's a hard job. It's a big job. Especially it's so divided. I mean, you just Burma, El Salvador, Colombia, Mexico, Libya,
Iraq,
Iran, Afghanistan,
Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia.
How many countries in Africa? So that's a tough job. But I mean, that's a key component to this. Is Syria. How do we help to stabilize these countries and make them safe so that people don't want to leave them in droves? I think that's one of the key components. The other aspect of it is I think that there needs to be a tightening of how we allow people into the country. Like, I understand that you are in a desperate situation, but the reality is that we are living in a time where, while it is the safest it's ever been, there are clear and present threats to our safety and our democracy, right? I mean, you can't deny the threat of ISIS. You can't deny the threat of Al-Qaeda. You can't deny the threat of, the drug war that's going on south of our borders. And so I think that it's important that we have vetting and that we have have border security.
Flat out open borders are really not an option.
It just doesn't I'm sorry, it just doesn't make sense to me. And there's, a lot of these, like, you can't go. I can't just go to Canada, right? Like, I can't just go to Canada. I mean, like, I got to go through checkpoints, and at least I don't know if I could actually get into Canada, right? Like, I mean, I got a couple things in my past where I'm not 100% sure if Canada would let me in based on how they look at certain, past transgressions or whatever. Now, I know for a fact that
flinging of bottle caps at innocent talk show hosts, I think, should keep you out of Canada or make you stay there.
What I do know is, if it's something, minor from your younger days, it's just a simple. You can explain it in the time in which it happened. They'll. But I mean, there was a situation. Point being is, I can't just go to Canada or France or Italy or Amsterdam, or not Amsterdam's not a country, but
it's an awesome place to go to,
right? Norway or Sweden or whatever. I can't go to any one of these places and just.
Well, and you're talking about visiting now.
I'm saying
we're talking about moving.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I can't just go to these places and set up shop there and say, well, I've been here for an extended period of time. Or I don't have any place else to go, so let's get this figured out. They're pretty strict on their immigration laws. Now, the other thing is that Europe only has so much room, and I think the reality is that Europe is having issues of integrating, the African population that's migrating there because of the different issues that are happening between Sub-Sahara,
and the Middle Eastern populations moving there, right? And the Eastern Bloc European countries moving there.
Exactly. The integration of these different cultures, these different people, these different, just all of it. Europe is having a tough time with it. They from a socioeconomic standpoint, and just from an actual where are we going to put people. Europe there's only so much room, right? The Middle East and Africa. I mean, when you look at them combined, the number of people, and then you look at the number of people flowing out, and Italy is only so big.
England is the best example,
right? I mean, right, but I mean, these places are only so big. There's only so much room. And what are they supposed to do? What are you going to do for work? They don't speak the language. They aren't familiar with the customs. There's just so much, and people want to ignore that and say, no, it's fine. It'll all just work out. No, I mean, this shit will take decades, and there's obvious resistance against it. And I'm not saying because there's resistance against it, then we should all just say we should punt on it. But I mean, the reality is it's a very, very difficult situation, and the solution is probably closer to let's figure out a way to keep them safe at home.
Yeah.
Right, and get them to want to go back home than to integrate them into the U.S. or Europe.
And I got a real up close and personal look at this about 6-8 months ago. My ex-girlfriend was through the church she goes to was a sponsor for a Syrian family, and it was a husband, a wife, and 4 kids. One of which was young, I think 3, and had a medical problem, a problem with his foot that required surgery. And so they were literally sponsored immigrants, refugees from Syria. They spoke English, although not particularly well. I did a few things to help buy bikes for the kids and stuff, but it was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. And I will say this, and this is maybe not polite, but it's honest. My ex and I got into a discussion when she said that, they would rather be in their home country surrounded by the people, the place they grew up in. And I said, I'm sure his wife would not like to do that. He would love to be back home because that's his comfort zone. She was going from a Muslim-run country where women were not treated as well as they are here. And my ex disagreed with me and then had a conversation with the woman, and she said, I'm never going back to Syria. Now, that's a totally different discussion. That's a cultural discussion and what happens when religions run cultures issue. But it was, again, it was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I mean, these people have been through shit I can't even imagine. They get to a part of Cleveland about 2-3 miles from where we are right now, which to them has to feel like, Trump Towers in terms of they're safe and they're whatever. And it turns out that in this neighborhood, there's a fairly decent Syrian, and I think Syrian and Lebanese, population. So they were able to find people who spoke their language. And my ex would always say that every time she went there, she was given tea. And she didn't know at first that was a cultural thing, that when you're welcome to their home, it's their way of saying, thank you, welcome, here's some tea. And she initially said, I don't drink tea, and then was told, no, please, and ended up anyway really bonding with this woman. And it was, I'm rambling a bit now. Yeah, but it was just, it was a funny thing how...
Who doesn't drink tea? Let's get back
she's a coffee drinker. But anyway, it was again, not to totally jump the tracks, but it was very touching. And when you think... I live in essentially the same neighborhood that they found themselves in, and he's found work and he's working for a hotel downtown, and we lost touch with him about 6 months ago, but it was a personal, in my face about what it's like for people who are literally fleeing from a refugee camp in Syria. I don't remember how they got out of Syria, but it was a harrowing thing from what I was led to understand.
Well,
Sorry, I'm going down a long road.
No,
but
no,
that's,
no, it's fine. I guess there's a couple of things about that to break out, and again, it's not that I definitely don't want to. I wouldn't want to send that family back to the situation they were fleeing. I don't want to send them back to a refugee camp. I don't want to send them back to a place where, their government is attacking them, where there are, there's a war between the government and rebels, where there is a terrorist component that's coming in and murdering and hurting people and raping and pillaging. That's not what I want to send them back to, or that's not what I want them to
have to choose between, right?
Right. But what I think makes the most sense is to figure out a way so that those conditions don't exist, or we minimize those conditions to the point where the few people that need help and that need assistance and that need to be rescued can go somewhere much closer to their home for that sense of safety, right? Like, so they don't have to flee and go across an ocean to find comfort and safety, but they can just find something, they can find that reprieve much closer to them. But I mean, like, you look at the entire country
or
of
not
Syria,
reprieve.
right? I mean, the entire country of Syria, there's almost nowhere to go.
Absolutely true.
And let's my thing is, let's figure out a way to reverse that. So 90% of the country is safe. You have a pocket of trouble where people need to leave that particular pocket, but hopefully the government can go in, clean it up, and then those people can go back home.
Unfortunately, the Syrian government is not something you rely on right now.
No,
and I don't want to point just to Syria because there's so many examples of it. I do want to not let the whole time we talk about this, but I really got a good look at a major metropolitan city dealing with mass immigration, and that was in Toronto. When I was in Toronto in 2015 for a project, just because of doing what I do and driving around and seeing stuff and whatever, and the fact that I grew up in Buffalo, so I saw Toronto in 1988, and Toronto was an incredibly vanilla. That's not totally true. It had Chinatown, it had ethnic pockets, but it was
mostly white.
It was very predominantly white. When I was there in 2015, there were times where I would be driving around and see nothing but Middle Eastern and Asian communities and people, and it was, I'm going to try to say this right, but there was obvious cultural problems because the people who were walking around there were like 3 or 4 traffic on pedestrian incidents a week when I was there, because the general norms of how traffic works was not something these people who had fled wherever they were coming from were used to, so they would cross streets. And I mean, it would, like, Steve, there was one day I was in the hotel bar, shocking, I know, and it was pedestrian struck by bus on this, pedestrian struck by car. And I'm like, holy fuck, what's going on here? But it was literally, and then I was driving around a different neighborhood and there were, and that's not meant to be a slight or an insult. It's a cultural shock. You fled wherever you were getting out of. Canada has been a very welcoming country to immigrants. And I mean, I think the Canadian government probably wants to and definitely should reach out and say, how do we get into these communities that are literally trying to build themselves as fast as they are trying to, integrate themselves, and, make these new citizens of Canada safe, and make the, society structure work. And I know, again, I'm going off on a bit of a weird tangent, but I got to watch, the 25-year, 30-year, whatever, time-lapse camera jump in a city that I know pretty well.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's even evident it's evident here locally in Cleveland. There's a growth in, we're seeing it actually specifically now. There are a number of, there've been a pretty solid number, and I don't know the specific numbers, but families from Puerto Rico that have been flown in and popped here. And I was talking to a teacher maybe 2 weeks ago, and she said her classroom size has grown by a third with students from Puerto Rico, and she's working with them. She's fluent in Spanish herself, so she's able to help them kind of get integrated into their new surroundings. But she said it's going to be tough, and she worries about their ability. She's worried because they don't really speak English, even though they're from Puerto Rico.
It's a Spanish-speaking community,
right? It's
most of them speak better English than
right. But I guess these kids, English is definitely their second language,
sure.
And these kids are a little older, so it's not like if the kids are younger, if they're in third grade or fourth grade or something like that, they have more time to kind of adapt and pick up changes, but. It's interesting to see it. And so I guess, it's such it's used as a lightning rod. And this is where I look at the left and say, wait, are we sure this is, what are we doing? Why are we saying this? Are we saying this just because some of the left stance on immigration, this whole idea of open borders and, additional security and checking people from countries that we know have strong terrorist ties, like I'm not 100% on board with saying, well, that's racist. Like, are we sure? Because if a majority of the terrorist activity is coming from these specific places, then shouldn't we just pay a little bit more attention? I mean, like, take away.
You're opening me up for a Saudi Arabia joke. That's gonna be way too easy for me to make.
Well, yeah. I mean, politics. There's always double standards in politics. I get it, but I mean, just a common sense. Just pull. Don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican. Let's just look at this from a common sense approach, right?
I don't know why we're going to start doing that now.
I know, but just looking at it from a common sense approach, if there are certain countries that we seem to have trouble with from a security standpoint. Now, I know there are Democrats. Where are your statistics to prove that? And we haven't had a lot of that. Listen, we haven't had a lot of terrorist activity on U.S. soil. I mean, you had San Bernardino.
On the grand scheme of things, that is a small risk.
Right.
9/11 was a huge one.
Right. 9/11. I mean, 9/11 was
a marathon bombing. There have been a few big ones.
Right. But I mean, I think it makes sense.
Grand scheme, there's a whole lot. Yeah.
But let's just vet who's coming into the country. Right. I mean, and
Absolutely.
If you come in, you need to come in legally. I don't think I don't think by saying if you want to come into the country, you have to do it legally. That doesn't make you a racist, right? And I think that's one of my biggest issues with this whole liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, where I can agree with Democrats in saying we should, like, if you want to come in the country, you should come in legally, right? No,
yeah,
like I get that you're coming from a place that's less than favorable, that's dangerous, that's scary and awful and terrible, but you still need to come into the country legally, right? And we have to figure out the best way to do that and the most efficient way to do that. We need to vet you, but at the same time, we need to treat you humanely, and we need to make sure that you're safe, and we don't want to return you back to a place that's awful and terrible. So it's going to take some brainstorming and thought process, but at the same time, the answer isn't just leave everything as is, and if you want to come through the southern border, then come through the southern border. Like, I mean, how does that make sense? I guess.
Oh no, absolutely does not. Well, it's a complicated thing, and that's part of the problem is that it becomes a political issue. It becomes a talking point issue rather than, hey, these are humans that are most of whom are trying to escape a worse situation. And I agree with you completely that the best situation is to help make the rest of the world safe. And I always think about this when today I was in the east side of Cleveland, and a lot of boarded up buildings and a lot of poverty and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not a neighborhood I would want to live in. But if I was coming from Syria, this would be a walk in the park. And it's just a weird thought process. It was like, wow, I come from my, middle class, really nice part of Western Cleveland. I feel fine here. I love it here. And yet 10 miles from here, I'm in a place that I think, this is a place that I would not want to, go to sleep in and wake up in. And if I was a Syrian, refugee, I'd be thinking, fuck you. You're not, a bomb is not going to land in your head while you sleep in.
Yeah, maybe not so much. I don't agree. I mean, I think because there's some other social, like, it's weird. You would think that that's how they would think, but that's not how they think, because I can tell you from firsthand experience where I grew up, like, I didn't grow up in the worst of the worst. Like, I grew up on Ohio Avenue, but Elm Street was literally in my backyard. So if I cut through Ohio...
You're speaking Youngstown.
Right, I'm talking Youngstown. So if I cut, so I lived on Ohio Avenue, but you take you cut through my backyard and my neighbor's, behind me backyard, then that landed you on Elm Street. Elm Street was one of the worst streets in the fucking country when I was growing up. Like, constant drive-by shootings, people getting killed left and right. We found multiple guns on that street. I found a 38 with the handle taped with masking tape, serial number filed off, just on the curb.
Well, that's why you file the serial number off, Steve.
Obviously.
I know what you're saying.
Constantly, I had a collection of shell casings, right? I mean, like, just walking down the street, shell case, another, a piece of candy, a piece of candy.
So people picking up sea glass on the Lake Erie beaches, that was shell casings in Youngstown?
Right. I mean, that's what it was. And so, like, that's where I grew up. And I know, there were people who, moved there from different countries who hated it. Right? I mean, they were leaving bad conditions, and they hated it, couldn't stand it, and they didn't like the people who lived around them. And there were a lot of racial tension issues, and that's why,
another issue, right?
Right.
Look at the Koreans moving into L.A. I mean, that was a classic example of racial tensions in.
Right, but but a lot of the people in Youngstown, a lot of it was Middle Eastern from different, whether it was Iraq, Afghanistan, or Syria, or wherever they were coming from. They moved there from where they were, which was really bad. They're in a better situation now in the United States, allegedly, supposedly. But you ask them, and they can't stand the people around them. Right?
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. It's just like
in their mind, I'd much rather get back home,
right? Than live.
I see what you're saying.
Live around, all these black people and these gangbangers and blah 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 and this and that. And that is a serious issue of contention. So
I guess I'm looking at the whole thing through my perspective.
Right. I mean, you're looking home to. You're looking through white guy eyes.
I am definitely looking through white guy eyes. All right. Speaking of white guy eyes,
can we make that a song? I'll work on it.
White guy eyes. I'm watching through them. They see my. All right,
stop.
That was awful. Stop. Actually, you know what? That was not so awful. I'm kind of proud of that.
Don't be.
No, I am. I am very proud of that.
I'm proud of it.
Anyway, so totally changing gears. We started talking about Trump tweets and Trump tweeting videos. Now Trump is talking about videos in a different way. If I understand correctly, and I've not heard this from him from a tweet directly, this is all from news sources that are saying that he has been talking around Washington how the Access Hollywood tape where he made the famous grab him by the pussy statement, he is now questioning the authenticity of that Access Hollywood tape. Wow. Just fucking wow.
The tape that he apologized for?
That he apologized for. That he called locker room talk. Right. That he made his wife call locker room talk.
Where he said Bill Clinton has said words to me on a golf course. The thing that got Billy Bush fired.
That exact thing, yes. Okay. Maybe it's not real. All right, so I'm going to go totally off the rails on you here. There's been talk about, I think, is it Tom Steyer who's done the whole we need to impeach the president because he's not competent thing. Mm-hmm. I've never taken that shit seriously. This makes me change my mind about that.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't for me. It makes me say, is his reality button broken? Is he Kim Jong-un with worse hair? Yeah, I did it.
I mean, that's a legitimate comparison. I don't know who's worse. Like they're both bad.
I do. Trump's is worse.
I think Trump's is worse because I could see Kim Jong Un's on someone else. Like Trump's, no one else does Trump's hair.
In all seriousness, if he
come on, man. I mean, he
come on,
he
man.
challenged Obama on the birther issue for years. Right?
Apparently, he's bringing that up again. Which why?
Well, I haven't seen or heard, but I mean, he challenged Obama on his whole birth certificate for years, which told me then he wasn't living in reality. You know,
but that was a push button issue. That was a push button issue. Doing the whole birther thing was I'm going to appease to the anti-Obama crowd. I understood the political reasons for doing that. It was
Jim, this isn't real. Again, this whole thing with Access Hollywood, you know what this is? Jingling the keys.
Okay, maybe
jingling the keys.
I mean,
why?
The tax thing's out there.
Because the tax thing not going to go through.
I think it will.
Maybe it won't. I don't think it will.
I hope it doesn't.
I know John McCain said he was going to vote for it, and so
you think he's going to do a last minute fuck you again? I would love that so much.
I don't know.
Oh,
but
I would love that so much.
There's that, and we talk a lot about Trump. He's the president. He puts himself in the media, in the news. He's active on social media, and so what has Trump done? What policy has he put in place that impacts your or my daily life?
Withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord.
Come on. How does that really impact you?
Oh, okay, it will impact us, but
how does it impact you day to day? I mean, I get it. You're pro. Listen, Captain Planet. I get
yes,
it.
all right. I am Captain
But
Planet.
I mean, like,
I do view that as a major impact to our daily lives. I truly do.
Fine, but technically, we're not even out of it.
Oh, true. Okay.
So I mean,
okay. I mean, finish your point. Let me say.
Well,
let me say. I will.
There's nothing to finish.
I will throw you a bone and say, okay, it doesn't go.
Okay, so he hasn't done anything that impacts your life, my life, or most anyone's life. He hasn't done anything. Right? I mean, he has talked a lot of shit. And he's stirred up a lot of dust and made a lot of noise. But what has he actually done? Now, what I will say is he's gone in and he's made some agreements with the countries in the Middle East and with China, but I mean those are a lot of handshake agreements, and we'll see how all that plays out. But if you really, really think about it, what has he done that has actually impacted our day to day?
I do consider that to be a loaded question because you could say that about any president, and yet I do think the impact he has on our national credibility, on just the social vibe.
Well,
I think those things matter.
Okay,
but,
I'm not saying that they don't matter, but in terms of policy, right? Because as a president, so what Obama did was he had the Affordable Care Act, right?
All right, that impacted things.
He
there's
also
been an attempt to obviously reverse that.
There were some other things that he did in terms of, working. There were other things that Obama did that potentially could have impacted had he done them sooner.
All right, so Obama definitely on an issue we talk about every now and then, marijuana. Obama said flat out, the federal government will not enforce those laws, so there will not be. All right, and this is both examples of that. Then, so that's something that Obama did. He said the DOJ will not interfere in states' rights regarding marijuana. You and I both know. Neither of us are marijuana users. We both know several regular marijuana users, and we both, I think, agree that it should be legal. And what we're doing right now, sipping this fine Eagle Rare Bourbon, is no better than smoking marijuana.
Probably way worse.
Probably way worse, but we're doing this, and no, because we're not breaking the law, and we would be if we were smoking weed, we would be breaking the law, which would mean we were at risk. Obama said, "Not on my watch. We're not going to do that." Trump has not yet put that into effect, but did put in our buddy Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who has said many things that impact that aspect of lives. So there's an aspect.
Okay.
I said the famous Jefferson Beauregard.
Jefferson Beauregard Sessions.
If you knew how much fun he had saying that. I just love watching you do that.
I just saying his name.
I love when I put a Whiskey Congress article up. I always spell out the whole name out of respect for you.
Right. But when I say it, I feel like after I say it, I should be sliding on like a Klan hood. It just reeks of that.
It does. Only because.
Well, and when you know the man, it just
it actually fits.
But anyway, my point is that Trump to this point hasn't done anything of much note. He's made a lot of noise, and he's continuing to make noise. And now he's kind of looking back, and he's like, "All right, I'm kind of out of shit. So what can I go? All right, let's go back to the beginning.
Birther works for me,
right? Like we'll just start it over again, right? And nobody will notice that we're going to close out this year, right? I mean, because now we're into, in a few hours, it'll be December 1st, right?
Yep.
And so at this point in time, we're a year past his election. We're, once we get
almost
into,
1 year of
right?
office,
we're gonna get to that year mark of him being in office. And the question is, all right, in your first year, what did you accomplish? Now, it's a 4-year term, right? We got 3 more years, right? We're only a quarter of a way through it. There's plenty damage he can do in the next 3 years. But I think he's looking at it and he's panicking and saying, all right, what have I really done? What have I really accomplished? What can I really hang my hat on from a policy standpoint? Like he's looking at the government's, he's looking at the economy, and he's looking at Wall Street, and he's saying, look, I'm doing that. But the economy was on a very upward trend well before he got into office.
Oh, you want
right?
realistic analysis. Okay.
All right. Okay. So, and I think he knows that, right? I mean, obviously he's riding the wave. There is more consumer confidence, and I guess that is the one part where you could say, well, because Trump is the president, we feel like he's going to do everything in his power to make, everything easy for corporations. So corporations are very confident in their ability to succeed. So numbers are up, right?
Fair.
I mean, that's a very simplistic. I'm not market analyst, extraordinaire. But I mean, that's a very basic kind of my view on what's going on. So I don't know. I think the guy is looking at what made the most noise for him. He's going back to this Access Hollywood thing. I think he looks at that as a loss, right? And so he wants to kind of ring the bell and say, hey, I didn't really lose this. It was made up.
I was about to disagree with you, but that makes sense. That makes sense in the sense of, especially now. All right, now you're really making sense to me, because right now the biggest story in the news is Al Franken grabbed my ass, John Conyers harassed me, Matt Lauer whipped his dick out. I don't even know what they accuse Matt Lauer of, but everyone, you know what, Steve, I'm now rolling downhill with this because so many of them are just gone. I mean, right. Matt Lauer, I know nothing about. I mean, I know who he is. Well, I know who he is. I know that Tom Cruise called him glib. But I mean, it was on, the Today Show? It was Good Morning America.
Yeah, he was on the Today Show.
Okay, I don't watch morning TV on networks. But, okay, I know Matt Lauer was a superstar in that. He was making $25 million a year or something, and just gone in a day. I mean, allegation and done, which tells me there was way more fire than smoke coming. And so maybe that's where Trump is. Maybe it's almost a fear reaction out of Trump. Like, I admitted to stuff that is as bad or worse than things that got these guys thrown out of their jobs with no trial, with no discussion, no debate. And so maybe that is the reason for him backtracking on that. You've changed my thinking on that.
I'm just,
or I mean, again, look at, John Conyers is now in the hospital being treated for stress related to what's going on after him.
He should be gone.
Well, Nancy Pelosi called for him to resign now, so now it's no longer to step down, resign, and
I mean the
allegations are ugly and old, and I don't want to defend anything of this nature because it's gross and. I've heard this said a bunch of times that, let me be white guy again and say white guys are now facing the level of scrutiny that they should have been facing for a long fucking time. It's just now coming home, and they're not comfortable with it because they've been getting away with it for so long. And just because you've been getting away with it for so long doesn't mean that's the way it should be.
It's weird you say that talking about John Conyers,
All right, I've got Matt Lauer and Al Franken and all these others on the list too. And I mean, Harvey Weinstein. But you're right.
It's just the timing was a little bit weird. But
yeah,
I mean, I guess
John Conyers. I don't see color, Steve.
Okay, well, John Conyers. Because you didn't see color, John Conyers is black.
I'm aware. I lied.
No, you know what's? I think with this, I mean, I think we should have a segment called "Men Behaving Badly" to see, who's
that
on the
segment
list.
will never be.
Right.
We will never have trouble finding.
Right. You have John Conyers, who's representative out of Michigan. You have Matt Lauer. Matt Lauer was fired basically in the heat of the night.
Wow.
And show came on Monday. He wasn't there, and it's just like he's fired. I mean, it was on Twitter before the Today Show was on, and from what it sounds like with Matt Lauer, he had some sort of inappropriate relationship with a woman at the Sochi Olympics. That relationship carried on. Chances are she was someone well under his pay grade. And, it was one of those, you should probably do this because I'm Matt Lauer. And she probably said, well, if I don't, am I going to get fired? And, I mean, that's not an enviable position to be in. Every time I hear these stories, it breaks my heart because, you can go to, well, she didn't really have to. She could have kicked him on the ball. She could have said no. I mean, just go find another job.
All right,
whatever.
what's going through my head right now is Don Lemon's bite off his penis.
Yeah, I mean, just all that dumb shit. But it's easy to say that now when you're on the outside looking in, when it's not you.
I know. I'm not sincerely.
No. I'm just saying. I mean, but the reality is, in the moment you freeze. I mean, you saw what Terry Crews went through, right? I mean, and Terry Crews is a big badass dude. And so for Terry Crews to be like, well, what the fuck do I do? Right? Like I'm emasculated in front of my wife. I should rip this guy's head off, but it could cost me my job. And I should tell someone, but it could cost me my job. And, your career is important because, everyone wants to be a fucking social justice warrior and speak out against all this other stuff. But at the same time, you want to eat. You want your lights to be on. You want to be able to fucking put gas in your car, right? You lose a job. Like, I don't care about consumer confidence. Like, it's not easy to get a job, right? I mean, like, Terry Crews just can't, like, just because, he's done an Old Spice commercial doesn't mean he can just, if Hollywood goes away, then people are going to hire him just because. Like, I mean, come on, people. It's not that easy. So when you're faced with the idea of being put in that compromised position of do something sexually you don't want to do, or not have a job and who knows where that leads you, then you may do something that you don't want to do sexually. And well, I mean, myself have never been put in that position, right? I've never been put in a position where, someone has said, you need to do something with me sexually in order to, I've never been in it. I can't imagine it, but what I can only imagine the vulnerability you must feel, and that's, to me, that's not fair, right? The fact that I can't even imagine feeling it, and my only reference is an obscure one with Terry Crews, tells you kind of how fucked up this situation is, and that's why I think we have to be overly sensitive to it, right?
Okay.
Where there's, when you have these accusations, we have to take them seriously. And if we don't, and we go, well, we'll let it run its course, knowing it's he said, she said, knowing that power corrupts absolutely, and the fact that, some of these men in these power positions are worth millions of dollars to the companies that they work for, we can't just say we'll let it run its course of investigation and legal and everything else.
Because it takes years and dealing with stuff that was years ago in most of these cases.
Because ultimately a lot of it doesn't go anywhere, right? A lot of it, I mean, because if they're not criminal accusations and they're not being investigated by police and everything else, then what's really going to happen? Nothing. right? I mean,
Fair.
so you kind of you have to do something. I think you have to overcorrect, like we said in the last show. You have to overcorrect. The men that this is happening to, they can afford it. They can deal with it. Matt Lauer,
it's hard to feel.
You know, what I mean,
a
Matt
ton of
Lauer
sympathy.
last year made $20 million. The year before that, I think he made $15 or $10 million or whatever. Matt Lauer will be fine financially. Okay, like his career may not ever take off again, but I'm sure he's fine.
And
right?
maybe more importantly, people will learn that you can't act that way just because you're making $15 million a year doesn't mean you get to act that way.
And that's my point, is that this is why we have to overcorrect. So you have accusations, and yet maybe 10% of the accusations are false or fake or whatever. But if the rest, if it's 10% or even if it's 5%, right, of fake accusations or whatever,
Eagle Rare kicking.
we have to respect that. We have to deal with it and say, okay, maybe there's going to be a small percentage of people who take a hit that they shouldn't have taken. But in most of these cases, most of these guys are saying, I did it.
Well, and
I mean,
I
even
think,
Matt Lauer.
I think you do need to do the basic fact checks. Like if I say, Matt Lauer grabbed my nuts, and you can say, well, you've never been in the same room as Matt Lauer. Okay, you got me. But if you can say, all right, I was in Sochi with this guy, I was in these rooms, and I'm saying this happened. If he can, if he wants to defend himself, okay. But benefit goes to the accuser.
Right.
I
mean,
and
that's
again,
and I think
court
the
of public opinion.
benefit needs to go to the accuser, unless it's blatantly obvious. Like, I mean, the Project
examples.
Veritas situation where
that's where I was going to go.
I mean, you can with the Project Veritas, it's a group that they go to try to catch. They're basically
media,
a conservative watchdog that they go after liberal media and liberal leaning groups, officials, people, whoever, and try to catch them in lies and precarious situations. They went after the Washington Post. They tried to set reporters up from the Post who they thought were attacking Roy Moore. The Washington Post reporters didn't fall for it. And
no, they did their job perfectly.
They did their job. They did exactly what they did. They vetted and ended up catching this particular person in multiple lies.
Yes.
And, saw her going into the Project Veritas offices and everything else. And so, I mean, and that's an instance where, okay, like, they did their job.
So a couple of things. We're running a bit long, and there's a few things I want to say. A friend of mine, when I was in West Virginia for Thanksgiving, said, sometimes we talk too smart, which I'll take as a compliment. But if you want to know what we're talking about there, Google Project Veritas Washington Post, and you will see all the details of the story that Steve just talked about. And then I want to throw two things at you real quick, Steve. And one of them is the NFL has responded to all of the, anthem protests and stuff, and said that they are going to come out with an $89 million program over the next 7 years to bring awareness to these causes. I think that's a good thing. I don't know what they're asking for in return, what the NFL ownership is asking for in return. But I will say that if people's posture during the national anthem has led to $89 million going into addressing an issue, I think that's a great thing. My quick reaction is that I would almost like to see acknowledgement by the players and say, step in the right direction. We'll call off the protests for the rest of the year. I don't think they should have to do it. I would just kind of like to see it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's the way it should end. Because I don't necessarily think that, while yes, sports is a great platform, professional and even collegiate sports, they're a great platform for athletes to speak up and speak out. I think there are limitations to that platform. I think that athletes have moments where they can make a statement that has a very strong impact. But I think if you try to let that linger for too long, the guns kind of
loses its power.
It loses its momentum. It loses its power. The guns get turned against you, and the message gets lost. And I think that with the NFL, they were very close to the message being lost. They were very close to, okay, you took a knee, you pissed off all the 40-something white guys, and you got Breitbart all riled up, and you may have impacted some of the ratings and viewings and the money of the league. Okay, so what did you get out of it? And had the league not ponied up, then I would say, okay, guys, I don't know what you did. This now, and I'm saying this kind of with an asterisk, is this is a good way to end it. I don't think it's the ideal way, but I don't know if there's an ideal way to end this, because in reality, this isn't the job of the NFL or these players to fix these problems. These are problems that need to be fixed within these communities. These are problems that need to be fixed within these police forces. These are problems that need to be fixed within local, state, federal government. These are problems that need to be fixed within the judicial system. The NFL can help and support, which is what they're doing. And this is a good move, and this is the way that it needs to end. I get that 80% of the league is black, and of those guys, 80% of those guys come from these negative or these bad neighborhoods and everything, lower income, whatever. But at the same time, it is entertainment. Mm-hmm. And people, and people are looking to cling on. Like, people want to so bad want to be a part of the movement and the resistance and this and that, and everything's got to be, now everything, we're fighting over everything. Professional sports is professional sports. It's entertainment. That's what it is. And these guys get paid a lot of money, and that's actually part of part of the rift in the design in the divide. Is people are, if you took away the money, nobody would give a shit, right? Like, nobody would, like conservatives really wouldn't care. Well, they probably watch. Liberals really wouldn't care because they wouldn't make. If you take the money aspect of away, then a lot of this wouldn't fucking matter.
Well, the money aspect's two-sided though, right? Because if the players weren't making all this money, fine, people wouldn't care as much. But the league is making a ton of money because of how much we care.
Right.
And if we didn't care so much, the league wouldn't be making so much money, and players wouldn't be getting paid what they are.
But
so
I guess,
kind of a.
But then you flip it, but my point is college sports, right? Because there's a ton of money being made in college sports.
True.
It's not being made by the athletes. And so the same people who are decrying and upset and pissed off at the NFL will sit there and watch college football day in and day out, and will tell you how much better college football is than pro, because the players aren't making the same amount of money, not realizing that Ohio State is making, $500 million a year.
The school's making a ton of money. The kids aren't getting shit.
Based off
different
of
conversation for
those
a different
kids
day.
playing football week in and week out. But so I guess for me, this is just the best way for it to end. I think what happens, the NFL says, all right, we're going to invest money over this amount of time. The players and the teams can invest it into nonprofits, into local organizations in their communities to help impact a positive change. I think it can help. They can do it so many different ways. And hopefully they are creative and they're smart with this, where they reach out to the local police and they reach out to local community centers and they reach out to local school districts and everything else, and they bring them all together and they do multiple events and they pay people to be involved and help kind of bridge the divide, which that can have major impacts in those communities. So if they do it right, it can definitely be a huge positive thing.
I mean, I remember about, a year ago, maybe a bit, probably almost exactly a year ago, there was a pancake breakfast in this neighborhood. And you took your daughter there. And you took your daughter there because you wanted to say, here's my face. I live in this neighborhood. I want to interact. It was I think it was run by the firemen, but it was
no. It was
okay.
the Cleveland police. I remember they had the horses there. I remember
that's right.
I tried to put my daughter on the horse, and she was like, "You're stupid. I'm not doing it." But then she saw the motorcycle. She got on the motorcycle.
And you said, my life is miserable.
I could not get her off the fucking motorcycle.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
But
But that was an example of an event that made things better, right?
That was the sort of thing that was important. Let me tell you why that was important. I did that, and I met a number of police officers on that day, and shook their hands, looked them in the eye, talked to them. How long you been on the force? I moved into this neighborhood, however many years ago. This is what and lo and behold, there have been times where something's going on, and they see me, I see them. Where prior they have no idea who I am, and maybe they look at me as a possible suspect, or when they're driving around the neighborhood, they see me as a threat. But now they know me. And, instead of pulling me over, they just kind of give me a nod, or, like I see them at like I'm at a bar or something. They come in, they say, hey, like something's going on. Be careful, or something like that, as opposed to giving me a weary eye. And then I get pinned down in a parking lot when I walk out of a restaurant or a bar or something along those lines. And let's close on bringing up Mike Wood again, because he did text us during the show.
He talked about when he was a Baltimore cop, he didn't interact with the community because that was not what the program was. It was, you drove through and you looked for stuff, but you didn't have that connection. So if this move by the NFL leads to things like that pancake breakfast and allows or encourages or forces the community that the police are serving to see the faces of the people in their community, that can only be a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. And I mean, I think it's not only the pancake breakfast. I mean,
events of that nature.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like with Colin Kaepernick, when he was still in San Francisco, he put on, they did like a haircut drive. Where,
that's right. That's the barbershop
where the barbershop cut the hair of the police officers, but had people come in, and that was it wasn't a huge booming success, but it was a moderate success. And anytime you can get
piece by piece, though, right?
Right. I mean, anytime you get interaction with the police, with the local community that they're serving, that matters.
It's a step in the right direction.
Right. I mean, and because you're less likely to fucking shoot and kill somebody that you know. Right. That's just human
nature.
nature.
Because they're less. They're an asshole, in which case you're more likely. There's that. All right. That's let's close this down.
Yeah.
One thing, let's just close it down. We are at Whiskey Congress on social media. We're whiskeycongress.com. That's where you'll see Steve and I write and talk about articles and things in the news. We are available on all.
We're going to figure out how to link the podcast to the website.
Yes. Until then, we've go to iTunes and Stitcher.
Right. We've gotten some questions on why that is. We're working on it, folks. We're going to get it figured out.
Let's not air the dirty laundry.
It's not. People.
No, you're right. I get all the time too.
Emails and a couple. We'll figure it out.
We will. All right, man. Good talking to you. Good. And Eagle Rare. Oddly, see, this is the kind of harmony we had tonight. We agreed on the whiskey score.
That's nice.
All right, man.
I feel like my training of you, young Jedi.
Oh, you're
young Padawan.
You just call me young. Good one. All right, I'm way more
Star Wars.
I'm way more Yoda. Yeah, it is. All right, man. Let's close this out.
Wait, hold on.
Go ahead.
By the way.
Yes.
I'm going to nerd out here for a little bit. Did you see the trailer for Avengers Infinity Wars?
I did not.
Fuck you, Jim.
Don't get mad at
me. Just end the
show.
show. Never mind.
All right, never mind. I ruined everything again. Show is over.
We're not doing it live.
Out.